Hello everyone, welcome to Poesy's e-learning and certification services. This is a bonus video session in Python series, and in this video session I'm going to show you how does Python treat data given to it as input. And for this we are going to compare it with another popular programming language, C. The first difference between Python and C is Python is an interpreted programming language and C is a compiler based or compiled programming language. So I'll keep C on one side and Python on the other side, and I'm going to show you data handling of C and Python. Whenever it comes to writing a program in C language, we always start with a declarative statement. And the declarative statement will specify format of data representation, type and size of the data, and a name to be assigned to memory location where this data will be stored by compiler. So how does a typical declarative statement looks like in C language? First comes optional format of data representation, then comes type and size declaration, and then comes a name to be assigned to memory location. Here, if you don't specify unsigned, the default format of data representation in C language is signed. Int, the size of data or memory location where data is going to be stored, and most of the compiler assign 2 bytes of memory to hold integer type of data. I is a name to be assigned to memory location. So once this has been done, compiler will take a 2 byte of memory area, will assign the name I to it. Now once declared, what do we do in our program? We store our data variable. For example, here I'm storing 2 in the memory location allocated to us for data storage. In C language, we read statement from right hand side to left hand side. So in this statement, we are assigning data variable 2 to memory location named as I. Finally, post execution, you will have this data variable 2 stored in this memory location I. When it comes to Python, in Python programming language, you don't need to write any declarative statement. Python supports dynamic typing. What does it mean? This means Python assigns type to data and memory location on its own. Programmer doesn't need to do anything. Let me show you this practically. So I will open ideally Python IDE, and on Python prompt I'll simply type my data variable 2, a number. I'm pressing enter and Python has accepted it. Now it is interesting that we have not assigned a name to 2. Question is, how are we going to address it? Let me show you. So in Python, we directly put our data variable and Python happily accepts it. Post this, we can assign a name to our data variable, which was 2. Now see, the difference between C and Python is, in Python, we read a statement from left hand side to right hand side. So here, we are not assigning 2 to I, because 2 was already there. I came later. So we are assigning a name or a reference or a pointer to 2. In C programming language, name is called identifier. In Python programming language, these names are not identifiers, names are pointers. So we have 2 stored in the memory location and we have a pointer I pointing to this memory location. Now this is the first difference that you will have to take into notice. The next thing, if I declared instead of 1 memory location, if I declare 2 memory locations, let's say if I written this statement is unsigned int I, comma j. C compiler would have assigned me 2 memory locations. One is I and second is j of 2 byte size each. So now we have 2 memory locations, I and j, because we declared it this way. And if I had written 2 statements, that means assigning a value 2 to I and assigning a value 2 to j. C compiler would have stored the values in these 2 memory locations I and j. Now look at this once again. I and j are separate memory areas and both are holding same value. Now what if I do same thing in Python? What if I write one more statement? Let us first read this. We are assigning a new pointer j to data variable 2, which is stored in a memory location. So post execution of this statement, Python, what does Python do? Python assigns one more pointer to same memory area where 2 is stored. And look at the difference. C used 2 memory areas to hold or store same value, whereas Python used just 1 memory area to hold the value and 2 pointers pointing to it. This is the fundamental difference between C and Python. Let me practically show it to you. Okay, so here we have 2. I'm writing my first statement, assigning a name to 2. Okay, so I is now pointing to 2 and we'll be using I to address this data variable 2. Let me write or find out a unique identifier. You can also call it memory address, where I is pointing to or where 2 is stored. This is a memory area where 2 is stored and I is pointing to it. Let us write our second statement. I'm assigning second pointer j to 2. Now see, as far as addressing is concerned, j is also addressing 2. Let us find out where J is pointing to. I should have written J here. So B. Okay. Look at both the addresses. I and J both are pointing to same memory area where 2 is stored. So this is Python's unique way of dealing with data and managing memory in a conservative manner. Python is much more efficient when it comes to memory management. Now, one more thing. In C programming language, if you don't exclusively specify format of data representation, the default format of representation is signed. In both the cases, signed and unsigned, the range of valid values that you can store in allocated memory area will differ. In case of unsigned, memory range of valid values will be from 0 to 65,535, and in case of signed, range of valid values will be from minus 32,768 to 32,767, including 0. And as a programmer, you will have to take care of this. But when it comes to Python, once again, you don't need to specify this. One more interesting thing, in Python, if I check type of I and type of J, Python has assigned this type on its own. We did not declare it, right? And when it comes to range of values that you can assign to these memory areas, so let me take one more name, K, and I'm going to assign a value. Now look at the range. There is no limit. You can store a number as big as you want. It is only limited by the availability of memory in your computer. Okay, so K is this large size integer number storage, and as such there is no range. Okay, so that was just an introduction. The storage of same value in one memory location and using multiple pointers pointing to it, there are exceptions to this, and I'll cover this in one of my sessions. I hope you enjoyed this bonus session and the comparison between C and Python. So stay in touch and happy learning.